A few people tonight out here, any time I've been in Derry, I've been asked to do this particular piece. A few people asked me tonight about doing a day in the life of a Donegal man. I'm sure everybody here has heard it before. But if you would like to bear with me, as somebody said to somebody, I'll do it surely. But talking about the Donegal man, I was telling stories earlier about, you know, the one about where I say she said she wanted her there so she could summer anywhere. Well, that's the way the people who did servant boy and servant girl counted. In a bad farmhouse, for people who didn't look after you well, most of the servants had to sleep outdoors, maybe in the barn above the byre. Or in an outshed somewhere, as they called it in Scotland. They called them bothies, slept in an old bothy. But there was a story about a fella that was over in our part of the world from West Donegal, and he came to this farm to stay, and life wasn't very good for him either. I don't know how many have read any of the works of Patrick McGill, the Navy poet, and he tells some lovely stories, because he was one of those people himself. He ran away from home when he was about 12. He didn't run away, he had to leave to help to keep his family, and he was the oldest of the family of about 11, and he was 12. And he was hired in a place called Glenmornan, somewhere near Strabane. In fact, one of his stories is called Glenmornan. But this fella from West Donegal, a fella called Sweeney, was hired over in a place called Crawford's Shanvalley. And he landed at the Highland Fair in Strabane, and it was the May Fair. And they got home from the fair anyway. He was hired for 6 months. That was it was, from May to November. And if it was a good place, you would have stayed on. What they call it, you staying on, or are you moving on, go to the Highland Fair again, maybe I'll get a better place the next time. Because they're really slaves. There's another word for it. But this fellow found himself in this farm place anyway. And to give you an idea how hard they worked, they were sitting at the fire telling stories to one another at about 1 o'clock in the morning and getting on a while. So the boy was a bit shy to ask where his sleeping apartments were. But he started to unbutton his boots, take off the shoes. So one of them says to him, one of the brothers, 2 or 3 old brothers, there was no woman about the house. And one of them says, where are you going, son? What are you taking off your boots for? And he says, I think it's time I was going to bed. Oh, he says, don't bother taking off the boots. He says, just tie them up again, for we'll be heading for the bog in about a half an hour. That was true. As it cleared, they headed to work in the bog. And one of the days about the house then, he was about, and he was sent out to feed pigs. And he came from a neat wee holding down in West Donegal, where the turf was cut and the people were doing a bit of fishing, and everything was lovely and whitewashed and clean. But this place was as filthy as could be. As they say, it was the kind of a house where you wiped your feet when you were coming out. And he was down in the yard with 2 buckets, and he was trying to make his way through the muck. And he says to the farmer, he says, Jesus Christ, he says, this is the dirtiest place that ever I was in. And the farmer says to him, take no notice of the dirt, son, he says, where there's dirt, there's money. And by Jesus, he says, yous must be millionaires. The story was later on, he was only a lad then, when around the First World War, he found himself in the trenches in the Somme, and they were getting it very tight one day, and he was sitting beside his buddy, who was an English fellow, and the blasts were going all around them, bullets whistling over their heads, and they were beginning to think it was near the end. So the Englishman says to him, he got out of it, he made his way out for, what do you call him, McGill, who I talked about too, writes some lovely stuff about the First World War. When I say it's lovely, it's very, very sad. War is war, so you know. And the Englishman says, I'm afraid, Paddy, he says, this is bad news for us. He says, I'm beginning to think, he says, this is about the tightest spot I was ever in. But he says, would you hold your tongue? He says, you never was hired in Crawford's Shanvalley.